Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I have a little swatch and review for you. Beyond Polish was super kind enough to send me a gift card in order to pick up whatever polishes I wanted and do a little review of them. So I was really excited to see them carry the new Mini Macaron Le Sweet collection, which is basically their new line of regular nail polishes. Beyond carries a lot of them, but I only picked out 5 and I had a couple of extras that I wanted to pick out that were sort of like on my wish list. So I am going to be doing a swatch and review as well as sharing comparisons for all of them. So as always, timestamps are in the description box down below. But for now, let's just get into the swatches. Starting with the Mini Macaron, the first shade that I have here is called Blue Vanilla, which is described as a cool pastel blue. This one had a decent formula. I don't know how well you can tell, but it was a little bit on the thinner side, not super creamy and opaque or thick at all. I would almost want to call this like a very pigmented, almost crelly leaning kind of formula or feel. So I didn't have flawless coverage on the first coat, but it was opaque enough for me on 2 coats here, and I do think the color is really soft and whimsical. The next polish I picked up was Lilac Blossom, which is described as a light, creamy pastel purple. So I found this one to be a very similar formula to the last shade, but this one felt a little bit more crelly. It does look like it has pretty good coverage though. There's just like a little bit of this sheerness to it. So again, it's not going to be a super creamy, opaque, like one coater, but I got this opaque for me in 2 coats. As a disclaimer, if you aren't familiar with my reviews, I tend to be a little bit heavier handed, so I think you can get away with 2 thick coats or maybe 3 thinner coats. Next up I have Coconut Yogurt, which unfortunately I can't find an official description for, but I picked this up since I thought it was a lovely off-white color with a hint of a pink undertone. The formula on this was a little bit less impressive to me than the others so far, which to be fair I kind of was anticipating since it is such a light shade. The first coat, as you saw, was just a little bit thin and streaky, not super even, and the second coat definitely helped and looked better, but I feel like if you do look close enough, there are just some uneven spots. So I personally think this is the only polish from my haul that needed the third coat, and it definitely looks so much better this way. So while I wasn't super impressed with the formula of this, I do like the color and think it's refreshing. I of course had to pick up this shade called Matcha Latte, which is a light creamy green with yellow undertones. If you don't know, I'm a matcha girly and I am especially a sucker for matcha green polishes, so I just had to grab this one. But unfortunately, I didn't love the shade of green. It definitely has a really strong yellow undertone, which kind of makes it lean into the chartreuse category a little bit. I feel like it's just kind of picking up like a bright lime green on camera, which, you know, I do normally like, but this just has a little too much yellow in it for me. The formula was okay though. I found it to be very similar to Lilac Blossom. And the last Mini Macaron polish I have is Cranberry Jam, which is described as a bright and pretty berry pink. So no surprise, this ended up being my favorite. It is a super gorgeous, deep, hot pink color that I would say also had the best formula of all the ones that I tried. It looks absolutely flawless on the first coat. It is incredibly even coverage, but I wouldn't exactly call it a one coater because I feel like this still had a little bit of sheerness to it where you could still see through to your nail line. So I would still recommend doing a second coat to make it more fully opaque. Then I picked up 2 KBShimmer polishes. The first one is called Stick With Me, which I believe came out in the spring collection last year, but this one is described as a shimmery, soft pink base that leans a little bit more coral because of that intense golden shimmer. I feel like in the bottle, it looks so incredibly orange, but it does pull a lot more coral, like a peachy pink sort of color, which I think is so pretty, and the shimmer in this is kind of that same multi-chrome shimmer as some other polishes where it goes from yellow to green to cyan in extreme angles. It is so gorgeous, but I just could not capture it on camera. It was so frustrating. So you'll just have to trust me that this one is beautiful. And the other KB shimmer that I picked up is Pull It Together, which I believe is from the same spring collection. This one, as you can see, is a super bright, almost mid-tone green polish in this reflective glitter finish that I think is packed with a lime green sort of reflective glitter. It is super gorgeous, super sparkly. I mean, if you know me, you know that I'm a sucker for KBShimmer's reflective polishes. I have quite a few of them in my collection, and I have just been missing like a brighter green one, so I really wanted to get this one and I love it. The formula on this was relatively smooth. Obviously it can be a little bit finicky to work with because it is just so packed with glitters, but it's not as thick or gritty as other reflective polishes, though I still would recommend using a glitter grabber type of top coat and maybe a peel off base just for easier removal. And the last polish in my haul is Orly's Unraveling Story, which I believe was from the fall collection last year. This one is just described as a mysterious deep gray, and I don't know why I was expecting more from it. Like, I kind of thought this was gonna have more of a blue undertone. It kind of does, but I think I would say it's like a pretty true, like dark charcoal gray. No surprise it had a flawless formula, but yeah, I picked this up mainly because I just don't have a lot of dark gray creams in my collection. And the formula on this was flawless. So getting into comparisons, we're starting with Blue Vanilla from Mini Macaron, and I wanted to first show it next to a couple of bottle comparisons, starting with Holo Taco's Too Good to Be Blue and Mooncat's Sinking Feelings, which are the pastel blues from those respective brands. But those are a lot more vibrant. They don't have the softness that Blue Vanilla has. I actually thought Mooncat's Sabertooth was a little bit more similar in color, though that one obviously has a shimmer and it's also more sheer. So I also wanted to show it next to Mooncat's Melting Clocks, which was a Dearly Departed shade. Even though that one also has a pink shimmer in it, I thought the base color was going to be a bit more similar because Melting Clocks has more of like a crelly kind of formula, so I thought it would build up a little bit easier. But it still is decently sheer compared to Blue Vanilla, so I still wouldn't call these dupes. I do have a few more bottle comparisons though, just for like color reference. Here it is next to Essie's Ride the Soundwave, which was from a previous spring collection. That one again is just a lot more vibrant, not as soft or powdery. I thought Color Department's Forget Me Not was going to be more similar. It kind of has that same powdery feel, but it's a little too dark. I think the closest shade in my collection, at least when it comes to the value or like brightness or saturation, is Olivev's Jeannie, but hopefully you can see that there is a pretty big difference when it comes to the color, where Jeannie is more of a true like periwinkle. Then for Lilac Blossom, here it is quickly next to Mooncat's Sweet Nightmare, which is their pastel purple, but as you can see, that one's a few shades too dark and too bright. It is a little bit more similar to Holo Taco's Serial Killer, at least when it comes to like that tone of purple, but again, Serial Killer is a little bit more vibrant. So I thought the closest was going to be ILNP's Butterflies, which is a very soft white based kind of lilac lavender shade. I was so sure this was going to be like an almost dupe, but seeing them on the nail, they are definitely super different, where Lilac Blossom is just a lot more dusty. I thought I had something closer from Olive Ave, so here it is next to Irisation, which is the pastel purple from last year's spring collection, but as you can see, that one is too white based, so that one now is on the left side of my thumb. And then I remembered Artie, which was from a previous spring collection, which I just don't have in my collection anymore. I think that one is the closest. It's just like a drop more blue, while Lilac Blossom has more of like a pink undertone. So not exact dupes, but definitely very close. And lastly, I have a little sneak peek of Crack's new jelly of the month coming soon. It's called Lavender Chai, and I thought that these were gonna be more similar, but Lavender Chai is definitely more of like a true jelly kind of finish. I'm wearing 2 coats of each here, so you can definitely see through to my nail line with Lavender Chai. I thought doing a 3rd coat definitely helped, but it's still a little too squishy to be a dupe. Moving on to coconut yogurt, I of course have to show this next to like a pure white. So here is Mooncat's White Rabbit. So you can see that slightly off-white, almost pink undertone in coconut yogurt. It's definitely not similar to Holo Taco's Ivory Tower since that one leans a little bit more yellow. I thought the closest though was maybe ILNP's Soulmate from their recent Valentine's Day bundle. That one does have a super soft pink undertone, but it looks a little too bright. And then I remembered I also had Olive's Elwell, which was from last year's spring collection. That one does have this purple shimmer, but I thought the base color looked like it was going to be an exact dupe, but then seeing them on the nail, they just do not compare. I would say Soulmate is the closest, but that one has a little bit more pink in it. I wanted to see if I could kind of recreate coconut yogurt using a couple of Cirque shades because the color really reminded me of Cirque's Odette, which is a really soft and light milky pink, but it is a little bit like too pink, so I thought to sort of lighten it, I could do one coat of linen over that. So I feel like the color is kind of there, but the Cirque shades are obviously sheer, so it just has a totally different look. And lastly, I wanted to show it to Cracked Polish's She Doesn't Even Go Here, which was the most recent jelly of the month. That one is another like milky whitened pink, but very obviously pink. Next for Matcha Latte, I of course have to show this next to a couple of my matcha polishes. The first one is Cirque's Matcha, which as you can see is a little bit darker and a little bit more vibrant. And here it is next to Holo Taco's Matcha Maker, which is a bit more muted, I would say. And both Matcha Maker and Cirque's Matcha are definitely a lot more green. You can see how much yellow is in Matcha Latte. Again, I thought I had something closer from Olive Ave, so here it is next to Sprout, which is one of their spring greens, I think maybe from last year's collection, and I thought they did look pretty similar. I would say that Sprout is a little bit more green and also a little bit more muted or dusty, and then I remembered Olive Ave's Lyra, which was an older polish from a summer collection. That one has a bit more yellow in it, so I thought it was going to be a closer match to Matcha Latte, but I would say that Lyra is like a more true chartreuse or like a yellow chartreuse, while Matcha Latte is a green chartreuse, if that makes sense. Then for Cranberry Jam, I wanted to first see this next to Olive Ave's Slater, but that one is a little too bright and maybe more blue toned, I would say. So some slightly more reddish pinks I had were OPI's A Kick in the Bud, but that one's like a few shades too light. So I thought the closer ones in my collection were OPI's Madam President, which I would say looks pretty similar in the bottle. It's just maybe a little bit more saturated. And I also wanted to see this next to Londontown Lacquer's Teeny Kini, which does lean a bit more purple. So it's not as similar, but even OPI's Madam President is a little bit darker and more reddish. So I surprisingly didn't have a dupe for this one, but I still wanted to show it next to a couple of ILNP shades, mainly the two recent ones from the Valentine's Day collection. Here it is next to Love Letter, which is more of a muted mauvey purple undertone shade. So definitely not close at all. And here it is next to Adored, which is a little bit more similar, being like this berry color, but that one's a lot darker and more of this reddish purple. Then for KBShimmer's Stick With Me, I wanted to show it next to KBShimmer's Flip Out, which is another super bright coral. Again, keep in mind, these are looking so orange here. They're like more pinky coral, maybe peachy leaning in real life, but I don't know, they're just really picking up orange. Either way, they are not dupes. Flip Out is just more pigmented, more neon, but I was immediately reminded of a couple of these peachy shimmers from Cirque, the first one being Flaminglow from the Kelly Marissa collection last year, and the other being Fandango, which is another one of their shimmer kind of polishes. I think Fandango is definitely the closest to being a dupe. I think the base is a little bit warmer or just slightly more pigmented than KBShimmer, and it also has a dainty hollow sparkle. Flaminglow has a lot of holographic sparkle, and it's also a couple of shades deeper too. And lastly, for Orly's Unraveling story, here it is next to Holo Taco's Cold Slate, which is their blue-gray kind of cream polish, but that's way too light. ILNP's Truffle is way too dark, being just this deeper gray with like a brownish undertone sort of color, but it like borders on being black. I think the closest color that I had in my collection was Night Owl Lacquer's Brewing Up a Storm, which I thought was going to be more similar to Unraveling story, but the Night Owl shade is that typical navy slate gray kind of color, but I would say it's like more of a true blue while Orly is gray. And lastly, for some more color reference, here are two bottle comparisons for Mooncat. The first is Like a Moth to a Flame, which is a little bit too dark and too warm. I actually think the closest gray color-wise is Mooncat's Triceratops, which is more of like a medium gray, but it's actually a few shades too light. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for this little Beyond Polish haul. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think of the shades that I picked up, because I definitely have some thoughts on these. So starting with the Mini Macaron Le Sweet polishes, I thought they were okay. They were good polishes, but not great where I was really like blown away by them, if that makes sense. And you know, I kind of have conflicting feelings about that, because obviously I would love to have like, you know, amazing experiences all around with every nail polish that I try. I really was looking forward to these because I do think they are super cute, but you know, I just didn't love them. My biggest pluses are just how freaking cute these bottles are. Like, I love the packaging. The caps also, I don't think I mentioned, have this sort of like soft rubberized kind of feeling, and I don't find them difficult to hold even though they are round. These aren't the type of caps either that kind of like pull off, like it's just this is the cap, but I don't find it difficult to hold either. I think because this like middle part, you know, that kind of has the cutout, that's sort of like the perfect place to sort of like rest your fingertips, you know? So I personally don't have any difficulty holding it, but as you might notice, like it kind of looks like a super like short cap, but when compared to like the KBShimmer one, it's kind of hard to, you know, see exactly, but they're virtually the same. Like maybe there's a millimeter of difference in the actual like brush length for the Mini Macaron one being like a little bit shorter. But the main thing I think is just the cap being like wider, and so it just feels more stout, you know, but they're virtually the same kind of length. The Le Sweet polishes retail for $10 each, which I honestly thought was really impressive. Like, it seems like a very affordable price point, especially because a lot of other indies and boutique brands can be at least $12 and then get more expensive from there. But these are also 10 milliliter bottles, which are actually kind of small. Cirque, for example, is 11 milliliters and is probably one of the smallest bottle sizes like on the market. Though I do think there are some indie brands that are like 9 milliliters, and you know, those are also a few dollars more expensive, but they also have a lot of like specialty finish polishes, while these Le Sweet shades are, from what I can tell, just all cream polishes. So, you know, $10 for a cream sounds about right, but again, these are just smaller than a lot of other creams or just bottle sizes on the market. Orly and OPI are other big brands known for their creams, but they have bigger bottle sizes at 18 and 15 milliliters respectively. Though to be fair, I am pretty sure OPI has been like raising their prices over the past couple of years, so they no longer really have like $10 creams like they used to. So, you know, something to consider, but generally the price is okay. My main gripe with these polishes is unfortunately their formulas, where if you don't know me, like my personal preference is a super creamy, opaque sort of formula, especially for cream polishes. I definitely prefer when they're just way more pigmented, especially on the first coat, because that usually means they're like solid two coaters. I really hate having to do a third coat, which again, out of the 5 that I tried, I only really needed to do a third coat for the one shade Coconut Yogurt, which is the lightest one, but the other 3 lighter shades I feel like could have needed a third coat if I just like did thinner coats or something. So that's definitely a personal preference thing. I know a lot of people do prefer having like these thinner, more crelly, fluid type of finishes or formulas. I'm just always going to prefer something that's like a little bit more creamy and pigmented, mainly because for me, it also can double as like a nail art polish. And these I don't think would be the best for that. Keep in mind though, my review and experience is just limited to these 5 polishes that I tried. 4 of them being like lighter kind of pastel shades, and the one that I had the best experience was like the slightly darker one. So I imagine if I had picked like another 1 or 2 darker shades similar to Cranberry Jam, I probably would have had like a similar positive experience with the coverage. And finally, for the other polishes that I grabbed, the 2 KBShimmer, the Orly shade, no surprise, I had like a really great experience with those formulas because I've used those brands before. I think the polishes themselves were very pretty, and I'm overall happy with my picks, but I'm still feeling like a little, not buyer's remorse necessarily, but I'm still feeling a little conflicted maybe about the Orly shade, because once I got it in, I was like, oh, it just looks so similar to something I have, even though, as you saw in the comparisons, I don't actually have a dark gray quite like that. But in a way, I think I was just expecting it to be more than just a dark gray, like for it to have more of this blue navy sort of undertone. But then at the same time, if it did lean that way, then it would look even closer to the Night Owl shade that I have already. So I should be glad that it's like not a dupe for that, and that the Orly is like a true dark gray, because that's obviously just kind of missing from my collection. But I think maybe I'm just on the fence about it because I'm sort of, you know, in that weird place with my collection now where I'm trying to acknowledge that, you know, it's okay to have gaps in my collection. I don't have to have every single polish in like every kind of finish, but it's I don't know, I can't help but be like satisfied at now having like a true dark gray sort of cream. And the KBShimmer polishes, no surprise, I absolutely love those. I was so excited about the green reflective because it's just so bright and fun. I don't want to say I was like disappointed with Stick With Me, because the reason that I wanted to get it was to see if it would be like a better or more affordable dupe for Cirque's Fandango, which is like the main reason I didn't want to pick it up earlier. And it's definitely not an exact dupe, but again, seeing like the comparison portion and just seeing how it compares to Fandango just reminded me like how much I love that shade. You know, it's still a beautiful polish, so I think it's a good enough like replacement for Fandango if you want something that's more affordable and also larger. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my whole little review for these shades. Again, thank you so much to Beyond Polish for letting me pick out these polishes. As a reminder, I am an affiliate with Beyond, so if you do want to shop through them, I do have a discount code down below. Using that or my affiliate link gives me a small commission, and that just greatly supports me and my channel. So as always, I do appreciate anybody who supports me through that. But even if you don't pick anything up, I would love to know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!